welcome everybody. Thanks for making the time on this early spring day. We're very excited for the fourth webinar of year 4 of the FCCI Forest Climate Change Initiative Science and Practice webinar. We have yet another great webinar scheduled, and I'm excited to get going. We also have a field tour scheduled for Friday for those interested in joining and seeing some of this work that gets presented in the actual 3D. But before I get going, I just want to acknowledge the Wabanaki, the people of the Dawnland, are the original stewards of the forest we discussed today. The University of Maine is located on a marsh island in the homeland of the Penobscot Nation, where issues of water and territorial rights and encroachment upon sacred sites are ongoing. The university's Center for Research on Sustainable Forests supports forest research and education in the homeland of the Penobscot Nation and other Wabanaki tribal nations. We strongly support the inclusion of Indigenous science and values in forest stewardship, management, and research. So I'd like to acknowledge both the University of Maine Center for Research on Sustainable Forests and the Munsungan Fund that has supported this webinar series over the years, with Meg Ferguson's efforts to keep us organized and on time. I also want to acknowledge Logan Johnson of Maine Tree Foundation, and I also want to acknowledge Amanda Mahaffey of the Forest Stewards Guild. As many of you know, Amanda's kind of been with us from the get-go and has switched from the Forest Stewardship Guild to the U.S. Forest Service Fish and Wildlife Service. So we really miss Amanda's involvement, but she still remains active and around for people to cross paths with her. So today, the emceeing will be done by Maggie Mansfield, and excited to have her involvement and help us move this along and really. I'm very excited about this series. It was intended in March to acknowledge Women's History Month, but I think we'll get a unique perspective and hear about it and get out on Chance of the Woods. So with that, welcome everyone, and I'll turn it over to Maggie.
Thanks, Aaron. As you mentioned, I am Maggie Mansfield of the Forest Stewards Guild. I'm happy to be here today with you. You will have seen some poll questions pop up on the screen, so if you could answer those. I see some responses coming through, but we'll give you a short little bit of time to answer those. And in the meantime, I'm really excited to hear from 4 women involved in management of Williamsburg's forest today. We'll be hearing from Sarah Robinson, the Executive Director of the Piscataqua Soil and Water Conservation District, Molly London, a licensed professional forester, Julie Davenport, a Maine Forest Service District Forester, and Jessica Leahy, a professor of forestry in the School of Forest Resources at UMaine. So we will give another maybe 5 seconds for you all to answer poll questions. All right, I think, Meg, if you want to end the poll, we can share out where everyone's coming from. So it looks like a bunch of us are from Maine, about 60%. Some of us are from New England, and we have a few folk from other US regions. In terms of the background people are bringing to this meeting, we have sort of equal distribution of foresters, conservation related, and other natural resource professionals, with some scientists and someone that is not any of the options. It looks like most of you have worked with a woman forester, landowner, researcher, or land steward. About half of you in Maine and the rest out of Maine, and a few of you have not. So Meg, I think we have another. Do we have another poll question? There we go. A couple more questions now that we've gone through, and we'll give you maybe 20 seconds to answer these. So, are you familiar with the Williamsburg Forest? Do you use or think about active management? Have you considered legacy planning on your forest land? I'll give you about 5 more seconds. All right. So, seems not too many of you have seen or heard or been to Williamsburg Forest. About half of you have not even heard of it. So you're in for a treat, I think. Do you use or think about active management to mitigate the threat of changing impacts due to climate change on your lands? Most of you say you've implemented strategies. Some are gathering information, and the rest of you are not managing land. Have you considered legacy planning for your forest land? Only a few of you say yes to this. A bunch of folk are interested, and a few of you have other plans that aren't relevant. So thank you for sharing all of this information. I think with that, I will pass it over to Jessica with the slideshow for Sarah, Molly, Julie, and Jessica.
Yeah, how's that? Can everybody see the slide? I see Meg sort of nodding.
Yes.
Okay, Aaron's
You
thumbs
can
up.
also. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to be the slide manager and review our plan for the webinar. And at the end of the webinar and doing questions and answers, we can also review the field tour plan. So the agenda for the webinar is that we're going to provide an introduction to ourselves and our career paths. Sarah, who was unable to join today because I believe she's releasing trout, has recorded a video sharing the history of the Williamsburg Forest. Molly will then talk about the forest management plan and recent activities there. Julie will talk about the Maine Forest Service, and then I'll conclude with some research that is just about finished, sort of hot off of the press, just about ready, and then some recommendations of resources that might be valuable to you. So Molly.
Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is exciting. I can't see. Oh, there's the slides. Okay, sorry. Figuring this all out. Okay, so my name is Molly London. I grew up in a log cabin in the woods in Orrington, Maine, and I have been saying for quite a while now that I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. But when I look at this picture that I shared on the slide, and I think about the consistent patterns over my lifetime of the things that I've been interested in, I think I've always kind of known what I wanted to do, and I just had to get there. So I knew, for me, the book Last Child in the Woods by Richard Louv was really life-changing and really important for developing my own land ethic. And so when I read that, I knew that I wanted to work outside. I knew I needed to for my own mental health. So I found myself in the Parks and Rec program, Parks, Recreation, and Tourism at the University of Maine. I got my bachelor's there and luckily had Jessica as one of my advisors through that process, which was great. And I, through college, worked a few summer jobs in recreation and realized that I wanted to do something a little different. And I really enjoyed my forestry classes I had taken and learning about trees and wanted to know more. So got my master's in forestry from University of Maine in 2013. And then while I was getting my master's, I worked summers and weekends and evenings for American Forest Management. So after graduation, I got hired by American Forest Management to be an operations forester on their land base. They manage about 1 million acres of old paper company land in the state. And I got a lot of great experience working on that landscape. Then in 2016, after meeting my husband, decided to break off on my own and be a private consultant. And we have since then grown his family business. My husband's a third generation working in the woods. Previously, they've done forest road construction, fish restoration, work with bridges and things like that. And he had started a trucking company hauling wood, and then together in 2017 we purchased logging equipment. So we currently have 3 cut to length logging crews that work in the North Maine woods. And so I split my time 50-50 between managing the logging crews and then doing my private consulting. We also have 4 really awesome little kids. If you've ever seen me in the woods, I probably had at least one of them with me. This has really created an amazing opportunity for us to raise our kids outside and in the woods. So that's been great. And then, yes, for fun, we have a livestock farm. We raise most of our own food. We have cows and chickens, and then we own some land near our house that we've enjoyed harvesting. So in general, I think just for me, it was important to just say that I really have a strong identity tied to the land and stewardship of the land and the people that work on it. And that's really been a big part of why I've been able to do what I do.
All right, I'm next. I've got a cold, so I sound a little congested. Hopefully you guys can understand me. My name's Julie Davenport. I work for the Maine Forest Service as a district forester. The area that I work in is mostly Franklin County and Western Kennebec counties. So that's kind of the Western High Peaks region of the state for those of you who are maybe outside of Maine. I, similarly to Molly, actually kind of had a similar start. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I liked spending time outside. Actually, my dad is a forester. So a lot of people assume that that's why I got into it. Contrary to that, I actually had no idea what he did all day, other than the fact that he had a pickup truck and he seemed like a pretty happy guy. So one day when I was in high school, I went outside on, like stereotypical gorgeous spring day. And I just walked around in the woods for the afternoon. And I came in, and at dinner that night, I told my dad, I think I want to be a forester too. And he looked at me and kind of like narrowed his eyes and thought about it for a minute. He was like, I don't think that's for you, which is kind of funny because obviously I'm a forester now. But he basically told me that I would make a better park ranger than a forester. So I got my start I started out trying to get a degree in parks, recreation, and tourism at the University of Maine. But I shared some classes with some of the forestry students, and a lot of them seemed really cool. So I changed my major because I decided if I still wanted to be a park ranger, I could probably do that with a forestry degree, but I couldn't be a forester with a parks and rec degree. I could have got a master's degree like Molly, of course, but so I made the change. I'm glad I did. I ended up really, really liking forestry and kind of the industrial side of it. When I first got out of school, I had an internship at the pulp mill in Rumford, and I learned a lot there. And that kind of set me on a course. When that internship was up, I took a full-time position with the Sappy paper mill as one of their stumpage foresters. So I was working with crews overseeing timber harvest on private woodlands. And that's where I really learned a lot about forestry. I think I learned a lot about the ideas of forestry in school, but then actually applying it on the ground was some really valuable lessons, both in forestry and in life while I was there. When I decided that I was ready to start having a family, I changed my job to working for the Maine Forest Service just because it was more flexible hours and not quite as many hours. But I still really like being in the woods and working with private landowners. So now what I'm doing is a lot more of meeting with folks where they are. I'm kind of the stepping off point for them. So I meet with people on their properties, talk about what they have, what they can do with it, and maybe what programs are available that they can get involved with and what other types of opportunities are out there for them as landowners. So that's kind of the skyline view of my career. To kind of keep with the theme, in my spare time, I also have a small farm where we grow most of our food. So pigs, chickens, cows, and a garden. And I've got 2 little girls. One is 5 months and one is almost 4. So that's pretty much most of my spare time, as you can imagine. But thanks for being here today and giving me the chance to talk, and I'm happy to pass it on to the next person.
All right, so that's me. This is a highly guarded photo of myself when I was little, but I'm sharing it publicly on this recorded webinar. So there it is. My educational path, well, it starts. I was raised in Eagle River, Alaska, like Molly, in a cabin. Molly and I actually have a lot of common threads in our life story. Molly was in a log cabin. I was in a T111 sided cabin, so that's one difference. Like her, it was a book that really drove me to go to college and to major in a major that was in the College of Forestry at Oregon State University. So that book for me was called Final Forest by William Dietrich, which was about the spotted owl controversy, very much focused on the different stakeholders involved in that situation and different perspectives. And so that combination of forest and people were pretty interesting to me. I majored in what was the equivalent of the Parks, Recreation, and Tourism major here at the University of Maine. There it was called Forest Recreation Resources, and my option was in environmental interpretation, which is very similar to environmental education. In my junior year, the resource economist professor hired me to start doing research, and that's where I became completely in love with doing human dimensions research. And so I stayed there for my master's and did a minor in resource economics and worked on my quantitative skills there. And then I worked for a while again in research for 2 years, also at Oregon State University, until I was able to get a PhD assistantship to go to the University of Minnesota. There, the degree was Natural Resources Science and Management, and my track was Economics, Policy Management, and Society. Then I was fortunate enough to get hired at the University of Maine, where I have been since then. And that makes it look like I've only had one job, but being in a large organization, there's a lot of opportunities to do different things for different periods of time. And also we have the encouragement to serve the state in various ways. So while I've been here, I've been able to be an interim associate dean for research and involved in the Maine Agricultural and Forest Experiment Station, the Master of Forestry Professional Masters Program coordinator, board president of Maine Woodland Owners. And right now I'm on the board of the Center for Northern Woodlands Education, which puts out the Northern Woodlands magazine. And that's a great opportunity to combine my profession with that service. In 2012, I became a private forest landowner. I thought if I was gonna, that I should practice what I preach. So put some skin in the game and started buying land. And now my husband and I manage 600 acres. We are recognized as with our Wikipedia Woods property, which is a Forest Steward Guild model forest, as the outstanding tree farm of the year in 2020. And then again, largely for the benefit of the students, but also for my own service activities around the state, I went through the process of becoming a licensed forester. And that included the full 6 years as a very old intern forester. And then in 2020, right before the pandemic, I was able to secure the actual license. And so that is everything I do. Weekdays, I'm here in the School of Forest Resources. Weekends, I'm out on a woodlot or the woodlot of landowners around the state. So it's, vocation and avocation, and it's trees 7 days a week. If you come on the field tour on Friday, you're going to get to meet 3 more people. You're going to meet Dr. Nicole Rogers, the landowner outreach forester for the Maine Forest Service. Carolyn Zigra, forester for the Appalachian Mountain Club, and Elisa Shine, a recent University of Maine Master of Forestry alumna who wrote the forest management plan with Molly for the Williamsburg Forest. So you're not done meeting foresters who are committed to climate adaptation and mitigation activities. Sarah, who will be there on Friday, was unable to join today, and so she recorded a video, both of her introduction, and then that will transition into the history of the Williamsburg Forest. So I'm going to play that now.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Robinson, and I'm the Executive Director for the Piscataquis County Soil and Water Conservation District, also known as PCSWCD. My apologies for not being able to join in person today, but I wanted to thank you for joining our webinar as we discuss the women's approach to climate adaptation. I've been working for Piscataquis Soil and Water Conservation District for the last 6 years, and before then, I was actually in the field of psychology. I had a career change when a former board member recognized my interest in agriculture and attention to detail and project coordination. I was approached to interview for the executive director position, and since then, I have taken a deep dive in the world of conservation with a hyper focus on forestry. I started my college career by attending Green Mountain College in Vermont as an environmental science major, and I feel like my path has completed its full circle, bringing me back to the area of interest that I love: nature, sustainability, conservation, and recreation, of course. I also own and maintain a 74-acre tree farm with my husband, where we have an organic garden, raised pigs, and home goats who have helped us with our invasive weed management and agroforestry on our lot. A nation that destroys its soil destroys itself was the warning issued in 1937 by President Roosevelt when he signed legislation authorizing the creation of soil and water conservation districts. At that time, the nation was facing a monumental task of protecting our soil and water from the ravages of improper use that resulted in the Dust Bowl era. The federal government realized it could only solve the problem through strong local involvement and participation. Local people had to be a major part of the solution, which is why soil and water conservation districts were formed. PCSWCD is one of 16 soil and water conservation districts in the state of Maine and are quasi-state agencies, not nonprofit organizations, who are established by state law to oversee all stormwater and soil resources in our county, per legislation MRSA Title 12. Our district works with landowners and operators to help them manage and protect land and water resources on private and public lands. PCSWCD's mission is to build resilient, sustainable farms and forests through education, technical services, demonstration, and stewardship. Piscataquis County is the most forested county in Maine, with Maine being the most forested state in the entire country. Since 1944, the PCSWCD has worked in our community to protect the soil, water, forests, and farms in this region. The forestry work that PCSWCD has been conducting is an ongoing process. PCSWCD owns and maintains and manages 3 parcels of public land that are community forests: the Law Farm Nature Trails, Williamsburg Forest, and Bailey Hill, totaling 380 acres. We are sure that landowners and foresters can resonate with us when we say owning land, and specifically enhancing that land, is a big job. We value our public lands, appreciate their many gifts, but also admit they are a massive undertaking to keep clear, safe, and welcoming. The land management work that PCSWCD completes is based largely on the 10 volunteer board of supervisors with very qualified backgrounds. Most of our board members are foresters who are either retired or currently work in the forestry industry. Some backgrounds include working for Baxter State Park, Appalachian Mountain Club, Bureau of Parks and Lands, Maine Forest Service, and private licensed professional foresters, such as our consulting forester for the Williamsburg Forest and board supervisor Molly London. I'm very confident that I'm surrounded by extremely dedicated and educated individuals to help make this organization successful, including best management practices for the care of our private lands that we maintain to be open for the public use. The past few years, we have received help from many volunteers, partner organizations, and grants, which have helped to maintain and enhance these public spaces. Most of this work was all done with the help from the community and volunteer efforts, and on a minimum budget. The Williamsburg Forest, previously known as the Demonstration Forest, which consists of about 196 acres located in Williamsburg, Maine. By the 1880s, homesteaders of European descent had acquired the land. The Williamsburg Forest was home to two families in 1894, the Decker and Lovejoy families. The Decker house and barn stood near the road where the trail's main entrance is now. And you can still see cellar holes from the structures and stone walls that surrounded the Decker fields. 20 years later, Sven Larson moved to the northern part of the property. He and his wife Gladys raised 14 children there. You can also find the cellar hole of their home that still stands near the outdoor classroom in the North Loop Trail. In 1940, the Decker property was sold, and it wasn't until 1990 when the Larsons sold both to the U.S. government. The U.S. Forest Service took over management and planted one of the Larsons' fields to red pine, Scots pine, and tamarack. The eastern white pine that now stands in the former Decker field may have also been planted. There are also two road crossings on the property, one of which is still in use as the ATV trail and another that ran southeast from the Decker homestead to the Canadian Pacific Railroad. It wasn't until 1980 that the U.S. Forest Service formally deeded the property to PCSWCD. The property became known as the Demonstration Forest, where visitors could see examples of various kinds of forest management. The forest has been used for many school groups and visitors. The Board of Supervisors and staff at the time were very dedicated to its success. 2 outdoor classrooms were built, one of which still stands, several tree plantings, including American chestnuts, a red pine plantation, and a tamarack plantation, which was monitored by the University of Maine and previous board members. Several harvests were also completed, and a forest management plan put in place. A variety of harvest sites were created, including an area where pre-commercial thinning of softwood has taken place and an example of shelterwood harvesting, a silvicultural technique used to naturally reseed and grow the next forest while retaining part of the old. Over time, with the change in management and supervisors at the district, the demonstration forest wasn't prioritized. Trails became overgrown, impassable, signs were broken, and demonstration sites unable to locate. In 2018, we started to rehab the forest and began making a new plan for reviving its history, the work that went into it, and to care for the woodlot to be remembered. PCSWCD worked with the Unity College Trail crew and other volunteers to open up the North Loop Trail, which was completely impassable. Volunteer days focused on clearing down trees, repainting boundary lines, and trail markings. UMaine School of Forest Resources participated in doing an updated GPS map of the trail system, which included then, in 2020, Carolyn Zegra, who was a student and is now the forest manager for Appalachian Mountain Club, and a PCSWCD board supervisor who has been invested in the ongoing progress of Williamsburg Forest. In 2022, we received a Maine Community Foundation grant that allowed us to make some major improvements to the access road with the Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife Landowner Appreciation Partnership and a local ATV club, where the roads lead to our outdoor classroom. We also removed all the old signs and updated interpretive signage that is consistent with the demonstration areas and Forestry for Maine Birds program, along with cultural significance to our surrounding neighbors, the Penobscot Nation. We also worked with the Penobscot Nation and the abutting neighbor to install new bridging on the roadway into the forest. The conception of women managing the forest really happened very organically. I believe it came to fruition when Molly London, who was our consulting forester at Williamsburg Forest, and I were talking, and it was apparent that we were the ones spearheading the undertaking of the management of the forest as we know it now, and we knew this would be a niche that would align with the district's views and progressive management ideas and just simply being women. We had 2 walks out at the forest that we called Ladies' Walks and Walk and Talks, where we had a variety of input from professional women in the field of forestry or interest in the forest. The collection of women consisted of a core group of 10 women, which included myself, Jessica Leahy, Molly London, Elisa Shine, Catherine Weber, Amber Hines, Terry Coulong, Nicole Rogers, Maddie Eberly, and Carolyn Zegra. It was Jessica who coined the forest's new slogan, "A Forest for Everyone Managed by Women." The question we asked ourselves then and continuously now is, what does a forest look like when it's managed by a woman? How are we incorporating climate adaptation? We are currently in the process of updating the forest management plan with Elisa Shine, UMaine School of Forest Resources graduate student, and with the help from Molly. We took the recommendations from the group of women that joined us 2 years in a row to walk and discuss the needs and wants of the future of the forest for the future. PCSWCD received a Maine Community Foundation grant in 2023, and again this year to help tackle some of the immediate needs of the forest. The goal of the Maine Community Foundation grant project was to improve accessibility and market the space as a forest for everyone managed by women, encouraging women woodlot owners to explore and participate in skill building activities, forestry demonstrations, and have a safe place to enjoy the outdoors. Like many districts, the community's needs drive the interest towards offering this type of specialized content, and we've continued in growing interest in attendance of workshops catered toward women woodlot owners. With a focus on NRCS EQIP approved conservation practices, Forestry for Maine Birds habitat management goals, and building the forest into a WOW, women owning woodlands, skill building ground. This project involves various local partners, including the Maine Forest Service, the Penobscot Indian Nation, and other local, state, and federal partners. The forest will help landowners see EQIP practices in action and give a working space for female forest landowners to practice management skills learned through PCSWCD's WOW programming. Definitely a specific and specialized space, but we have listened to the public and again, trying to meet those needs. You will see many of the improvements that were suggested by the group of women and supported by the grants that have already been implemented on the field day. We look forward to bringing more workshops and demonstration areas geared towards women specifically in our future programming. The Williamsburg Forest is also a certified tree farm as part of the American Tree Farm System, listed in Maine Audubon's Maine Birding Trail, and offers signage for Forestry for Maine Birds migration mural. Much of the property is high and dry, but there is a canyon wetland, a scenic overlook with an outdoor classroom, vernal pools, and 2 geocache sites. A trail system of 2.3 miles is open to the public year-round for hiking, bird watching, mountain biking, and snowshoeing. We are currently in the process of submitting a recreational trails program grant that will connect the outdoor classroom and hiking trail section to the gravel roads biking trail that connects to Appalachian Mountain Club's trail. PCSWCD wants the public to enjoy the 380 acres of community forest that we work hard to manage for recreational and educational opportunities. When you provide recreational opportunities for the public to enjoy, then conservation education can be understood as a priority. With the help from the community, we can continue bringing conservation education and technical services to landowners, foresters, farmers, and youth in Piscataquis County. I can't tell you how proud I am to be part of the work our team at PCSWCD is committed to delivering. Come take a look for yourself, and I hope to see you for our field day in person on Friday. You can find more information about Piscataquis County Soil and Water Conservation District on our website, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook for our fun and interactive social media updates. Thanks again for your time, and thank you to University of Maine Center for Research on Sustainable Forests, Maine Tree Foundation, and Forest Stewards Guild for making the Women's Approach to Climate Adaptation event possible. I look forward to seeing everyone for the field day portion of this event in person on May 10th, this Friday, and I hope everyone has a great day, and thanks again.
So I think it kicks over to Molly at this point.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sarah's so great. She's really great to work with, and she's just so perfect for her job. So I feel like she really just covered so much in that presentation. So I hope you enjoyed that. I want to start my section just by acknowledging that I want to acknowledge that the land that I am discussing, the land that we've been talking about with the Williamsburg Forest, is the traditional ancestral territory of the Penobscot Nation. And I want to acknowledge my personal gratitude for the opportunity to work and enjoy that land and everything that it has given to me. So Sarah mentioned it, but the more I started thinking about our approach at the Williamsburg Forest, especially how we are trying to address climate adaptation through this management plan, truly Indigenous knowledge and the relationship to our neighbors. The Williamsburg property has a few shared boundary lines with the Penobscot Nation land, and that relationship really is a big part of how we are addressing or attempting to address climate change through this management plan. I believe that the indigenous people have thousands of years of knowledge of adapting to environmental changes, and we just as a board have so much respect and reverence for that knowledge. And so it's really from day one been a big part of the decisions that we've been making and how we try to look at our tactics. So for me personally, as we were developing this plan and talking about what needed to be done, there were a few major goals. The big one that stood out to me was that we all came into this, and this land had clearly been managed for many years and managed well and had a lot of different hands-on activities done. But it was hard if there was a system to documenting that management activity. We never really found it. So it was hard for us to pick up the pieces after the fact. Sarah and Elisa especially spent a lot of time reading through old harvest records and digging through old management documents to try to figure things out. But there were still trees that we found planted only because they were listed on an old sign that was, half falling down in the woods or something like that. So we really had to piece together the management that had been done up until this point. So for us as a board, it was very important that whatever we do now, we make sure it can stand even if we as a group are all gone. We want to make sure future managers can pick up where we left off. They can see what we've been doing, why we did it, and they can continue those processes very easily. So documentation has been a big thing for us. But aside from that, for my own personal, management technique, I think something that really has influenced the way I am managing any property that I'm involved with is the Forestry for the Maine Birds program, and how it encourages you as a forest manager to truly zoom out and look at the property from a much larger viewpoint. I think so often we all look at our boundary lines and what's inside our boundary lines. And as we all know, the birds don't see it that way. So the Forestry for the Maine Birds program, they really encourage you to zoom out, look at who are your neighboring property owners, who do you share boundary lines, who is outside of their boundary lines, and what does that landscape look like as a whole, and then use that knowledge to help inform your management decisions. So for Williamsburg, that one of the ways that changed what we were doing, or that we addressed that, was we could see that some of our neighboring lands or some areas close to the Williamsburg forest were commercially harvested fairly heavily. And so for us, it was important to offer a contrast to that. So we plan some harvests in the next few years. There have been harvests before, but it was important to us that we create reserve and retention areas for a multitude of reasons, but that was for one. And that we also leave a cohort of large trees to address some of the habitat and ecology concerns that are lost in some of the heavier cuts around us. And let's see, some other ways that we try to address the climate adaptation through our management plan. You heard the history of the property from Sarah, and there's quite a few plantations and like farm service agency monocultures that are still present on the property. And so we have made a plan to address that and try to get some more diversity back into those stands through harvesting. We also rehabbed one of the access roads in 2022, and we increased the drainage pipe size for anticipation of increased rainfall events. And then one thing that our board has continually discussed, it's a really fun group to be on. The Piscataquis Soil and Water Board is full of some really really wonderful people. And I've really enjoyed just getting to sit back and listen to their take on things. But one thing that was important to the board was planning harvests that mimic the natural disturbances on the landscape. So if you want to look, so the maps that I showed on the screen, that just gives you kind of an idea of where the Williamsburg Forest is. If you know where Schoodic Lake is, Williamsburg is next to Brownville. So the Williamsburg Forest is kind of just through Brownville, off the beaten path a little. But Jess, if you want to go to the next slide. So this just shows one of the projects that Elisa took on as part of her master's project. She designed a cruise of the entire property. So this shows you the black boundary lines. The colored lines are the recreation trails. And so she designed a cruise, the whole thing start to finish. And it we used that, we collected a lot of information through the cruise, but it was really great because it gave us a really wonderful update of the status of the property and the timber resource, as well as the recreation and everything else involved. So the next map that's on there now shows a lot. Oh, sorry, go back one, please. That one. Okay. This shows this is the stand map. So these are the stand lines. Elisa took the prior stand map that was done by Kirby Ellis with the previous forest management plan, and she adjusted it for current conditions. And if you can see in stand 8 that there was an attempt towards a some patch harvests and some gap harvests in the past. And so that's something that as a board we've discussed wanting to continue and map well and do some future planning with, so that we can continue having those natural those gaps that mimic natural disturbance. So anyway, those are a few of the points I wanted to make. In general, Elisa, who will be at the field tour and can answer questions, she really did an incredible job with the management plan, and I've been really grateful to get to work with her and the rest of the group. And the work that we've done, especially, I think like I was saying in the very beginning, I want to bring it back to that, the relationship that we've been able to make with the Penobscot Nation. We've met with Chuck Loring and Ben Stevens of the Penobscot Nation's Natural Resource Department, and meeting with them as our neighbors, and just listening to their concerns, listening to their goals for their property and how they manage. It's a little different than the way that the rest of us were traditionally taught. So it's been really great for us to learn from them and use some of their techniques to inform our management moving forward.
Awesome. And I'll note that Chuck and Ben are both University of Maine School of Forest Resources grads. So we're definitely proud of them. Julie, you and I need to greatly abbreviate our slide. So this is your slide, and then I'll jump in if you'll make it, shorten it up a little bit.
I will keep it short and sweet. So I'm here to talk a little bit about some of the things that Maine Forest Service is doing in working with landowners and who are women, and also as some of us are women ourselves, I guess. I have to say, I'm not sure how big of an impact being a woman or working with women actually plays. I think most people are just trying to do their best, regardless of their gender. But some of the things that I'm seeing a lot of is there's a huge transfer of land happening right now. A lot of our historic landowners are either selling their land or it's being inherited by the new owners, basically, for whatever reason, whether that's something being passed on because someone's no longer interested in it, or because they no longer have the ability to take care of it, or if that's because someone's passed away and they've left it to a family member. But fortunately, a lot of those people are reaching out to folks like myself who have a role to kind of help people figure things out, navigate all of the different programs and different directions you can go with land management. So we're helping people get plans for their plans to manage their properties. That's a really big one that we're trying to work with folks. And we have someone on our staff who's specifically there to deal with things like climate change and carbon. So he's doing a really good job of knowing what's out there and helping to educate us as district foresters, who are then interfacing a lot more with the public on what programs may be available, how they may work for smaller landowners. Most of them right now are still targeted at much bigger landowners, but some of the things that we're focusing on, especially that relate to climate change, is kind of what I already said, a lot of that legacy planning. So right now we're dealing with people who are just taking in the property, but what we're finding is that there's a lot of times not a very clear plan for how that transition gets made. So folks are kind of trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what to do with them, and they don't always necessarily decide to keep it in a forest. And it's not really my position to try to tell them what they can and can't do, but anything that I can do to make forest management and land ownership easier for them is important, because at least as far as I can see, one of the most important things with the climate change issue is trying to keep forests as forests. They're doing a lot of really valuable things, and there's a lot of conversation and arguments out there about whether letting forests grow is better or whether harvesting forests is better. But at the end of the day, just having forests is the most important thing of all. So trying to help people figure out a way that they can ensure their forests are going to stay forests for a really long time has been really at the forefront for me and a lot of my coworkers as well. So I'm finding that that's something that we're trying to work a lot with, is just trying to get people information on legacy planning, get them thinking about it, kind of running through like forests live a really long time, probably longer than you. So maybe it's a good thing to have some of those thoughts in place ahead of time. But we've got a whole lot of programs available. I know I'm trying to keep it short, and that's kind of derailing me, and I'm not making anything sound super clear, but I am trying to be cognizant of everybody's time. So I'm happy to talk in more detail about what some of those programs and things that we're doing are at the field tour on Friday, or if there's anything specifically that people are looking for, maybe if they want to ask questions during our question and answer period, I can try to answer things more directly that are of interest to folks. But with that, I guess after that little directionless ramble, I'll pass it on to Jessica.
Great, I'll bring the webinar home. So I wanted to share very recently finished research with you. It's in review at Journal of Forestry. We go through a peer review process, and it was accepted with minor revisions, so we're optimistic about it. I won't go into the details, but basically with Maine landowners and social science theory, we created typologies that would help foresters to better talk with landowners and to help them with their management strategies related to climate. This might also be interesting for landowners to read, because you might identify yourself in these 3 different landowner typologies related to climate change. I also will share with Meg to put on the website some of my favorite resources. So Paul Catanzaro, Tony D'Amato, and Emily Huff, who was co-advised by Aaron Weiskettel and myself here at the University of Maine, have a publication called Increasing Forest Resiliency, and I think it is absolutely fabulous for both foresters and landowners. Also recently released, our good friend Ali Kasiba at the University of Vermont Forestry Extension has a guide to forest carbon in the Northeast that is great, excellent, highly recommended. And the disclaimer came out in part in segments for Northern Woodlands, the magazine of which I'm on the board. Also want to plug the University of Maine Cooperative Extension's forestry program, and in particular, we have Sean Horan, a climate smart ag and forestry professional, available to serve both foresters and landowners in the state of Maine related to climate smart activities. So reach out to Sean. For foresters and others, there's the Adaptation workbook put out by the NIAX group. That is a bit more advanced, and I'm happy to share more about it. I have gone through the full online course and could tell you more about that. And finally, Julie set me up perfectly for talking about legacy planning. The University of Maine at forest.umaine Legacy has a their land their legacy publication available for foresters who work with landowners and in the spirit of keeping forests as forest. We also have a Your Land, Your Legacy publication that's designed for landowners specifically. This is the website. There's a whiteboard YouTube video that also helps with it and can be a good resource. So with 10 minutes to spare, thank you very much. And we're looking forward to seeing those of you joining us on Friday, and we have a little time for Q&A.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. This was wonderful. I learned so much. We have a couple questions. First one is, how are the adaptive strategies that you mentioned employing at Williamsburg, specifically women's adaptations, as opposed to simply good climate science?
So yeah, I can address that. We actually met and had a discussion about that, that we all were kind of wondering, Sarah and Jessica and I specifically said, what is it that we are trying to do or that we do that is a women's approach versus just a group of professionals approach? And I don't know that we can really say either way. I think that that was one of the struggles that we had with addressing this, that like Sarah said, our group is a group of women, but that just happened organically. It wasn't intended that way. And so it has always just been a group of professionals trying to apply science and to the landscape, and we just happen to be women as well. I'm not sure, Jessica, if you have something you want to add to that.
Yeah, yes, that I had focused in that chat box. Penelope had also talked about international aspects of women and climate change, and that is something that here at the University of Maine, and with our faculty associate Laura Kennefick, who's with the USDA Forest Service, we worked with Krista Straub of the U.S. Geological Survey out of Colorado, and that resulted in a paper on carbon monitoring of women in different countries around the globe. So that might be better to follow up with with Penelope about that and how that relates to New England, because that the international issues related to women and climate change are it's worthy of its own webinar and discussion. And yeah, so returning to Williamsburg, I think what we found, yeah, we are all professional foresters, and we are trying our best to use the best science and to try to predict the uncertain future and have the forest in a resilient state for that. Many of the things that we talked about that would be women specific, say on the recreation side of things, are things that actually lead to an inclusive environment for everybody. And so that's how we got to that, a forest for everybody managed by women. So for instance, there is very good, in terms of advertising the recreational trails, there's very good cell service across the property. And so a few spots, but for the most part, so letting people know that if they did want to use the property, that they would have cell service makes it more accessible to people of different skill levels who maybe aren't as comfortable as Julie, Molly, Sarah, and I getting dropped in the middle of the woods with an analog compass and finding our way out. We recognize that there's lots of people that want to get outside that maybe don't have the same wood skills that we do from our professional experience.
Excellent. And please, everyone, feel free to type any questions you have in the chat. I have one. Did you notice any differences in working with a team of all women on Williamsburg Forest that you could share?
Molly?
I don't know. It's kind of a hard question. I guess I did not notice any differences. I think our group is really wonderful, and the board members are very wonderful. And I think that, No, I think the meetings that we had there with all the women were very similar to the meetings that we had there with all the male and female board members. So I guess I didn't really notice any differences in that way. I do want to note that um, maybe not necessarily relating to climate smart management, but just for managing for women, like Jess said, with the recreational side, there are a few things that we have done. The Maine Community Foundation grant that Sarah received, a large part of that was to increase signage because they had research saying that women in general feel safer in the woods if it is adequately signed and signed well. And like Jess mentioned, the cell service and things like that. One thing that I know just from my own personal experience that I always, if I'm going to go for a run or a walk in the woods by myself, I always bring my dog. And I always have loved that the Williamsburg Forest is one of the few places in our area that you can bring your dog off leash, and that's allowed. So I think that women and all people, I think that that's a benefit. So there's a few ways that women and managing for women really has impacted our management, but I guess I struggle to make those types of generalizations. Yeah.
I think it's also worthy of pointing out that this sort of happened by accident and then we ran with it. So Sarah, as the executive director, reached out to the local consulting forester who happened to be Molly, who then we reached out to the University of Maine, to the silviculture professor and the human dimensions professor, which happened to be Nicole and myself, where we lined up a master of forestry student who happened to be Elisa. And then we brought on the newest large landowner to the north, Appalachian Mountain Club's forester, who happened to be Carolyn. So, and then we all got together, and I think as we recall, it was the neighbor came over and figured out that we all had something in common besides forestry. And then, but we first showed up because of the organizations we represent and the expertise that we brought to this this new management plan and this new focus on Williamsburg Forest.
Amazing.
Just one more thing to add to that. Oh, sorry. Someone else speaking. Sorry.
Go for it, Molly.
No.
I
Okay.
was-
So just one more thing to add to that, that we also have seen as a district, as Sarah said in her video, that the district tries to respond to the needs that the community is putting out. So we have had many requests over time, and we have responded to these for women-specific workshops, specifically the chainsaw safety workshops. We've tried offering just general chainsaw safety workshops, and we usually do not get the female involvement that we do, whereas when we offer a women's chainsaw safety and training workshop, it's usually booked out. So it's something that we've seen that maybe when it comes to running chainsaw, women feel more comfortable when they know they're around just other women. So there have been a few, and those are hosted at the Williamsburg Forest as well, which has been great.
Amazing. Well, what I'm hearing is that y'all are just a bunch of people good at your jobs that happen to be women and have put together this wonderful, wonderful forest, manage this wonderful forest, and just a couple considerations to make it a little more accessible and welcoming to women who might not otherwise find themselves out in the woods. So thank you all so much for sharing and for all that all of your work on this. And I think Erin or Meg might have a couple of final notes about logistics for the field tour. But round of applause for our speakers, and thank you all so much.
Thanks for pulling us off. Really great webinar. And again, for folks that are interested in joining us, we do have a few slots open, and Meg put that in the chat. We'll be leaving around the Orono area about 8:15. So if you're welcome to join us and head up there. But I also want to acknowledge this is the end of our year 4 series, and year 5 is a question mark. So if people have thoughts about other places in Maine or elsewhere that the seminar should visit and think about, we'll welcome those suggestions. But I just wanted to put out my appreciation to Julie, Molly, Sarah, and Jessica for making this happen, and I'm looking forward to the field tour on Friday. So thank you, everybody, and hope to see you on Friday.